Welcome in to another episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner. It is very early on Tuesday morning before I go to the office, but trying to do as many episodes as possible because I know people are watching and I appreciate all the support, whether you're watching on Twitter, via StreamYard, or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or really wherever this thing comes out, YouTube maybe. Really appreciate everyone coming in and sticking around with me. Just got back from Chicago late last night, so we're running on fumes, but might as well get started because Champions League starts today, and that's a big deal for a lot of people. So we'll start with the early matches on Tuesday. I think this is just going to be a best bets episode for the first match day. I do plan to have a conference and Europa League podcast coming out later this week. And then, of course, the baseball and other things, the European Soccer Podcast with Mackenzie Rivers also coming later in the week if you want to hear more of that. But without further ado, we'll get to Dinamo Zagreb hosting Chelsea. Currently, Zagreb, a 1.25 underdog at home with all the juice. So maybe this falls down to one. I feel like Chelsea is very unlikely to be bet against. I feel like just based on the massive discrepancy in squad values for these clubs, I don't even need to look at it. I know it's monstrous. But I felt Chelsea were very fortunate this weekend. The foul on Mendy, the goalkeeper, that saved their victory late in the match was wild. Mendy just looks worse and worse every day. But Chelsea, they still have trouble scoring. I mean, it's hard for me to really agree that they deserve to win that match because it was so close for so long. They fell behind. Fortunately, the +1 ended up coming out and pushing, but really shouldn't have been that important to have that +1 and pay extra juice for it, unfortunately. So those of you that didn't follow along with the +1 that took 3/4, that sucks, and I'm sorry for it. But I swear the refereeing in soccer is not getting better. It's just one of those things you have to deal with and know that they're going to come for you. So that +3/4 sometimes is really important to buy it to +1. I'm trying not to do that with any other prices, but there's one that certainly matters. Now for this matchup today, Chelsea should be trying to build on that momentum. I imagine that they'll be playing what they can or what is available. The late substitutions bringing all the offensive players. Maybe that means some of them will start in this matchup. I don't know. It's hard to really predict what Tuchel is doing. Also, Jurgen Klopp kind of falls in that same category now with his substitution patterns, which are all over the place, very Pep Guardiola-esque. I feel like they're if you can't beat them, you gotta join them. But Zagreb are just not a very strong team. Lost the first leg on the road to Bodo Glimt, and somehow survived that at home the second leg to get into this competition. But they're big underdogs today, and 1.25 felt a little bit short to me, actually. So I think it's one of those where I'm going to happily be on the sideline, and we'll see what happens from there. But we'll move on to the next matchup in the early morning here, and I guess not that early, but it's early as I'm recording, and that is Borussia Dortmund hosting FC Copenhagen. I mean, Copenhagen had a really nice playoff run. We're pretty dominant in the first leg of the playoffs, and that was a big deal for them. But they have a big test coming here. Dortmund have not really looked like the offense that everyone really expected them to be so far this season. But they've done what they've needed to so far, and that's important enough. Getting a clean sheet or holding on to a clean sheet against Hoffenheim on Friday and getting that extra day was clearly important. But I'm not really sure what to expect from them in a European competition. Now, I would think that that Copenhagen would be an easier opponent than Hoffenheim, who they played this weekend, and really did a great job of taking Hoffenheim's offense and stymieing almost everything they had, which is a huge step for Borussia Dortmund because they were so bad defensively last season. But we're ultimately going to have to see if they can keep that going. I don't know that they play 3 center backs towards the end of matches when they try to squeeze out results, which is probably something they do here if they have a lead against Copenhagen as well. But that doesn't really feel like the old Borussia Dortmund that would push to win matches 2, 3, 4-0. Instead, they're trying to hold on to 1-0s. That's valuable when you're taking a 1 3/4 spread like you're seeing on Copenhagen today. But also, I think speaks to Borussia Dortmund not having a lot of faith in that defense, as they shouldn't, but also leave themselves open to collapse. And so Copenhagen, I wish they were a little bit more competitive. And in such a smaller league, it's hard to see them going to Dortmund and putting up a strong fight. And the problem is until you get 2 goals of insurance, which is the number I made it, and that at 1 3/4 with a lot of juice right now, trending back towards 1.5, which I saw last night, means you got to really stay in this match for throughout, because I don't see Copenhagen coming back. And Dortmund certainly have enough potent offense to score twice. Next, we'll move to I guess another just alternate lines for Chelsea. So never mind. We'll go to Red Bull Salzburg hosting AC Milan. Currently, Salzburg a half a goal underdog at home with all the juice. I feel like the line seems about right. AC Milan are, a very strong team for sure. But they're going to have to go on the road to Salzburg, who had sold a lot of players in the offseason. So they should be worse than last year, especially after advancing through the group stages. But we'll end up seeing what happens with them, because they have to prove it. But they're really experienced with playing young players and being successful and talented with them. They did hold over some players, but so many pieces left that it's going to be hard to see them. And I think I'm going to need to see how they perform a few times before I trust that they are the same Salzburg that did advance last season. I don't think they will be. And AC Milan, they're a really strong Italian side. They won the Scudetto last season. They've built the squad. They really won it, the Scudetto behind an incredible defense last year, which is only getting more experience, but is still very young. And I think that'll fit really well with the Salzburg pace, because they're going to run at them all day long. I lean to Salzburg getting a half of a goal at home, but I'm not sure that there's enough for me there to want to play or get involved just yet, until I see a little bit more from Salzburg. Next, we'll go Sevilla hosting Manchester City. Currently, Sevilla a 1.5 goal underdog at home, which is saying something. They probably would have been underdog last year to City at home, but the Sevilla club is just so different than what it was even halfway through the season last year. Awful collapse of the year, have had a really poor start to this season. Whereas Man City, they've been pretty dominant. They look like the best team in football. And unfortunately, while this does seem like a monstrous number for Sevilla and a very prideful Nervion crowd, I just don't know that I want to get involved with fading a team like Man City, because there's so many questions about Sevilla, if Lopetegui is going to even hang around, what they've done with how much they've sold in the offseason, and what they really brought in or have yet to bring in. It's tough, but last year I would have definitely been back in Sevilla here to keep it close. I just don't feel like they're the same squad this year, and that's a big problem. Next, we'll go RB Leipzig hosting Shakhtar Donetsk. Leipzig a 1 3/4 goal favorite with all the juice, likely climbed to 2. It's been back and forth between 1 3/4 and 2, at least I've been following it. And Shakhtar Donetsk, unfortunately, are a Ukrainian club that probably saw a lot of their players leave based on the wartime rule that allowed players to leave Ukraine, really, even if their contracts were not voided or ending yet. That's a really tough rule, but kind of makes sense that they have no country to really play in right now, and it's really disappointing. And war is a ridiculous thing, but RB Leipzig, they're going to have so much more depth than Shakhtar. They're at home. They're supposed to win this match by a lot of goals at the current price at 1 3/4. I don't really see a reason to back a Ukrainian team, unfortunately, in any of this competition or these European competitions, because they are very vulnerable for a lot of reasons. Next, we'll go Celtic hosting Real Madrid. Currently, Celtic a 3/4 goal underdog at home, which is bizarre to me. Way below what I was expecting. And I got to say, Celtic were very unimpressive in the Europa League last year. And it's really hard to see them hanging around with Real Madrid. This line certainly points to them playing very well today. I just don't know if I can really expect it to happen. So Real Madrid seems like a very cheap side, which is certainly something you want to avoid in a lot of betting sports. Cheap favorites are never a good thing. But I'm going to have to see Celtic perform at a whole nother level to believe that they are capable to hang in this group, most importantly, but also with Real Madrid, especially the defending champions. Next, we'll move PSG and Juve. Currently, PSG a 1.75 goal favorite, which is monstrous. But I guess we should trust it because PSG are so talented, are so deep, and Juve are just fighting so many injuries right now. I strongly believe in Allegri, the manager for Juve, taking a lead and then being as conservative as possible. I mean, that's what he does against all of Serie A, especially he'll do it against PSG, who are so much more fear invoking. But this number doesn't look like Juve will take a lead. And how conservatively can they play? Can PSG rip them apart? I think PSG's great start to the league season is no different than last year, but this is a very different competition, and they need to perform a lot better. I'm very interested to see what the Juve lineup is going to look like. It looks like Perrin will be in goal over Wojciech Szczesny, which is a problem. He's not very good on set pieces whatsoever, but PSG probably aren't going to be relying on those to score. It's going to be a big question for the Juve defense and what they can perform like, and then really what that starting lineup is going to look like. So I'm looking at Juve getting 1.75 goals. It's just a monstrous number. So I'm interested in it, but certainly want to see who's available to them so far. And last but not least, today we have Benfica hosting Maccabi Haifa. Currently, Benfica 1.75 goal favorite, which is pretty large, but ultimately feels like it's been falling since I've been tracking it. And that's a good sign for the Israeli side, Maccabi Haifa. I just don't know. I mean, Benfica probably want to play defensively and are going to be conservative, but I'm not sure what to say about Maccabi Haifa and how they're going to perform at this level. So I think for right now, I'm going to potentially avoid this one and then look to see what Maccabi Haifa look like. But that's, I guess, the end to Tuesday's matches in the Champions League. We'll move to Wednesday, and we have Ajax hosting Rangers. Currently, Rangers a 1.25 goal underdog on the road. Number hasn't been moving too much lately, so that's a good sign. But from where I sit, I think I'm not really as big of a believer in Ajax. They sold a ton of players. Erik ten Hag took so many of them with him to Manchester United, and they really were not victims, they were victors of a poor group last year that made them, I think, look a lot better. They finally ran into a good defensive side like Benfica and crashed out of the Champions League group stages right away. And I think Rangers are a pretty good worst team in a Champions League group. They're not at home where they're going to have a ton of crowd support, but ultimately going on the road here to Ajax, I think they have a shot. Problem is Ajax can score a ton of goals, and that makes even getting 1.25 less important or less vital to Rangers. They're going to have to stay in this match throughout and certainly be aware of late add-on goals from Ajax if they're trailing. But I think Rangers are a competitive side that deserve to be here, clearly on their run to the Europa League final last season. I think show that they have some mettle, and I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has been pretty good for them and what I've seen so far. At least in the European competitions. So lean to Rangers in the early morning of Wednesday's round of matches. Eintracht Frankfurt, the other early one, hosting Sporting Lisboa. Frankfurt, a 1/4 goal favorite right now, which feels a little bit large to me based on how they played this season. But they were Champions League or qualifiers based on winning the Europa League last year. Fun fact, they would not have qualified for anything in Europe based on their German Bundesliga performance. But I guess that's the nice part of getting that wild card. Sporting Lisbon were not very good in Champions League last year. Unfortunately, they had some big, heavy defeats. I don't know that Frankfurt have the team to do that right now. I mean, they added a lot of offensive pieces, which is something that seemed like they needed, but they've lost their defensive mettle and their offense has not really clicked just yet. I think Sporting Lisboa are going to really make it tough on them. I think the Portuguese league is not too far off Ligue 1 in France or the Bundesliga in Germany. So I think this is going to be a closer matchup than a lot will give it credit for. So I'm leaning to Lisboa as we speak. Atletico Madrid then hosts FC Porto. Currently, Atleti a 1/2 goal favorite with all the juice right now. I'm just not a believer in Atleti. I feel like they're a defensive side that's trying to play offensively, and they've lost both ends of the spectrum. FC Porto are certainly a lower league team from the Portuguese Liga, but I mean, La Liga is certainly not as strong as it used to be. It seems like it's the Premier League and then a big seismic gap between the expenditures to the other leagues. La Liga would probably be first. But I like Porto getting half of a goal. I feel like they will make it really tough on Atleti. And Atletico Madrid just aren't a team that I can expect to score a ton of goals. So it might be one of those things that we see them take an early lead and win 1-0, but I feel like there's a lot of room for FC Porto to come in the back door. And that's a good opportunity, I think, for a road team from a lower league that I feel like are not that different from the top leagues. I think the winners in the Champions League qualifiers from the lower but still good leagues are not that far off from the big boys in Champions League. Next, we'll move Inter Milan hosting Bayern Munich, and probably the toughest group that I can remember for a while, with Inter, Bayern, Barcelona, and then Victoria Plzen, which will be I'll be shocked if they don't finish last. But Inter hosting Bayern Munich is a great spot to be in for the third place, the expected third place finisher. Inter currently getting half of a goal at home from Bayern, and Bayern had a tough match this weekend. It's going to be a little different where Inter will not play and concede 72% of possession like Union Berlin did. But I think it showed that Bayern's still not exactly the fine tooled running well machine that they were last year. I mean, they've drawn their last two in the Bundesliga, also had a midweek cup match, so that's certainly zapping some legs a little bit. Thomas Muller did not start this weekend, which he did come on as a substitute, but I think they're going to try to monitor his minutes. And so we'll see what ends up happening. But Inter getting half of a goal at home, should have a huge crowd behind them in San Siro. Bayern are a great team and certainly are very talented, but I'm just not sure that they're this much better than Inter on the road, especially. I mean, this is a match where Inter need 3 points, but I think that they will be pragmatic enough and take a half. I also think that they have the scoring punch that they didn't have last year when Lukaku left. I mean, he's not really producing at the level that I think a lot of people were expecting, especially from 2 seasons ago. But he's taken him a while to get back into form. And I do like Inter getting a half of a goal as a draw, as a full bet win. Bruges then hosting Bayer Leverkusen. Currently Bruges a quarter goal underdog at home. And unfortunately, they're not that close, I think, in terms of talent based on how they performed last year. And I'm not sure they've done enough so far for me to believe in them. But Leverkusen have looked really poor. I mean, the way they collapsed against Freiburg this past weekend, certainly no slouch in the Bundesliga, and this is probably an easier game for them. But at home, I mean, what a poor performance. I mean, taking a lead and then ultimately falling 3-2 behind was tough, but they're going to have to bounce back. I'm not sure that I see that in them or from them just yet. Bruges, the problem is I just don't know on what level they are to Leverkusen. So lean to Bruges at home, getting a quarter, would certainly like a half. I'm not sure we'll get there based on Leverkusen's performance so far this year. So then do you want to back a Belgian team to hang with a Bundesliga from Germany squad? And that's the biggest question for me as we speak right now. Next, we'll have Tottenham hosting Marseille. Currently, Tottenham a 1-goal favorite at home with all the juice. I'm still not a believer in the way they want to play, their strategy or their style to cover big spreads. I think they're going to be great in the knockout rounds against against better teams and against really good ones just in general. I think Marseille are seen as an inferior one. So this is one that Tottenham should take the initiative and be aggressive, but I don't think we can really spot that from any on Antonio Conte's side so far. I just feel like that's not something that we can expect. And so I think from where I sit, I like Marseille getting the full goal of insurance, certainly as they're catching odds right now too. So it might even be higher and reach 1.25 by the time this kicks off. I think Marseille have done a ton of business. Their new manager has been pretty conservative, which I think is not something that Sampaoli was not doing last year. I mean, it seems like on the same par, but he might be a little bit more conservative. So I'm interested in that strategy and trying to limit as many counter-attacking opportunities for Tottenham. But I do feel like Marseille might be fighting for points here because they're a very proud club and they do have a lot of talent to score goals. So I really like them getting a full goal of insurance right now. Love the Luis Suarez transfer in from Granada as they were going down to La Segunda in Spain. And so I feel like Tottenham are still a big favorite that aren't going to have a ton of the ball. And I feel like that is a great way to end up trying to slide in a back door with a late goal to push, or just that Tottenham never gets a second goal. And then Marseille just need to score one to cover the spread and draw. Next, we'll go Barcelona hosting Victoria Plzen. Barcelona 3-goal favorite with all the juice on Victoria Plzen on the road. It's going to be a horror show potentially for Victoria Plzen, Czech side that really are in the toughest group and have very little chance of getting out of it. I'm sure they're going to go and try to defend as much as they can at Camp Nou, but I don't know how well that's going to work. So probably best to move away from that one now. And then it looks like the last match in the card is Napoli hosting Liverpool. Napoli, who a lot of dirt was thrown on their caskets earlier this season, but they've been a lot better than I think a lot of people would have expected. They basically went on a youth movement, started last season with Osimhen coming in, but they've only gotten younger, and I feel like they haven't missed a beat so far. I'm very interested back in Napoli here, as Liverpool have not looked like the team of destiny that they were last season. The goalless draw at Everton was not great. And I feel like they just haven't had the offensive punch, plus the weird substitutions I mentioned earlier that Jurgen Klopp have been doing. I feel like he's very worried about the health and wellness of his team, which he should be, but he's playing some very short minute totals for some of his best guys. And I really question why he's playing that way. I know there are a lot of matches coming up, but it hasn't looked good. And I feel like going on the road as a favorite, if they're going to continue to use the substitutions in that manner, that makes me like Napoli even more. I think the crowd's going to be nuts. I think Liverpool are a wounded duck right now. They're going to fight pretty hard, but I just don't see them as the same squad that they were before. And this number is actually higher than I made it. So getting a half of a goal on Napoli seems very, very interesting. So thanks for watching so far. I'm going to wrap up Champions League right now. I'm going to give best bets for each day of Champions League. So start with Tuesday, since that's when we're recording. I'm going to try my best to get this done on Mondays going forward, but say la vie, it was on a plane and kept getting delayed yesterday from Chicago. Dinamo Zagreb, not really on the list. Copenhagen going to have to prove something first. Salzburg, same story, considering how much they lost. Sevilla have just lost too much to even consider backing today. Shakhtar Donetsk getting 1 3/4 is a big number, but it's really hard to back a Ukrainian side in this day and age. Celtic only getting 3/4 at home seems so short. I think Juve are my favorite that I've come to so far, getting 1 3/4 goals from PSG. Certainly PSG could blow this one apart, but I feel like we've seen them struggle offensively in this competition before, and Juve are going to have a defensive mindset. Maccabi Haifa getting 1 3/4 probably not worth it, and that finishes Tuesday's card. So I think Juve getting 1 3/4 is most interesting to me right now. Moving to Wednesday, Champions League. We have Rangers getting 1 1/4 goals. That's of interest to me, definitely. Sporting Lisbon getting a quarter from a really poor Frankfurt start to the season, certainly on my list. FC Porto getting a half a goal, even money is interesting. I feel like I like everything on Wednesday. Like Inter Milan getting a half at home. Bruges getting a quarter from Leverkusen. I think I want to see a half. Marseille getting a full goal of insurance at Tottenham is of interest. Nothing for Victoria Plzen, and then Napoli getting a half of a goal. I like a lot. So Juve plus 1 3/4 on Tuesday seems to be my best bet. I'll do the same thing as my normal weekend podcast with an ultimate best bet coming. But I'll pick my favorite one for Wednesday, and I feel like Napoli could be it. Marseille could be it. Bruges is not too far away. Inter Milan getting a half is of interest. Porto getting a half from Atleti that might climb to 3/4. Sporting Lisboa getting a quarter from Frankfurt. I think ultimately Rangers getting 1 1/4 might be my favorite one, just because it's over a goal, and I just don't necessarily believe in Ajax just yet. So I'm going to take Rangers plus 1 1/4 as my best bet for Wednesday, and I'll also make that my ultimate best bet. Rangers plus 1 1/4 minus 115 on the road at Ajax. I think they're going to be a very competitive side in the Champions League this year. And getting more than a goal is a lot of room to lose and cover. So that'll do it for this episode. About 25 minutes in for Champions League match day 1. Any futures and stuff I'll tweet out as I go through it. Haven't come to those yet, and certainly have a few hours ahead of me at the office. Thanks everyone for watching. You can follow me on Twitter, @the_real_G Warner. Please like, subscribe, do those things on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're catching this. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon.